Thanks for being back with us, Gary.
Good to be here, Matt. Good to see you. Good to see you, Pat.
Well, good to see you, Gary.
And I told Gary right before we got on the air, I said, Pat's in the room, so you're just growing in your conservative credentials with
I'm gonna help
someone
you out
like
here,
Patricia Todd in the room. You should, you know what you should do? You should elicit Pat to go and campaign against you. That would help you so much.
Hey, Matt, I think that's an insult.
20 years, I think we both served together at the United Way on the AIDS subcommittee.
That's true.
And
that's right.
We're successful in getting a
We
substantial
were.
grant.
Our folks, obviously we are. We live and breathe the political world on this show every day. As you're out and about, are folks starting to take notice of the 6th congressional race? What is creating that atmosphere of folks paying attention? What are folks talking about?
I think that what's driving a lot of it is they realize that we're about to make a change, but also just current events, the economy, the energy situation, things like that. There's obviously a constant clatter about Obamacare and people's concerns about that. So I don't think there's the hubbub that we'll have come May, but people are paying attention.
I said to one of your competitors the other day, one of the folks that has his hat in the ring, that we're and I'm just a simple guy, but if I were running a debate and the announced candidates were on the dais, the first thing I would say, by show of hands, who's against Obamacare and wants to repeal it? Everybody raises their hands, and then we move on from there, because there's really not much disagreement with regard to Obamacare from anyone in the race, right?
Well, the difference between me and the other guys is that everybody's going to be for repealing Obamacare, but we're not going to repeal Obamacare and go back to what we had. We've got to talk about what we're going to replace it with, and we know what to replace it with. We've got to have a plan that encourages young people to buy insurance. It makes no sense to them to be paying $300, $400, $500 a month in premiums for insurance they don't think they're going to need. Young people think they're indestructible. So we need to expand the health savings accounts so that those people can put their money into an account when they need routine health care. They can get that and let them buy a high deductible, $5,000, $6,000 deductible major medical plan. And what they don't use will roll over year after year. So, you could literally graduate from college, get out of high school, and time you're 30, have $25,000 in a savings account. That makes sense. We also, on the other end of the spectrum, need to make sure that people who have chronic conditions or can't afford insurance or can't get it are able to be insured, and we can do that with, and there's a plan on the table right now to appropriate about $7 billion a year that will go to the states as a lump sum. It won't be a matching thing like Medicaid, which Medicaid, because it's a match, it's highly inefficient and highly expensive, but it'll be a lump sum and create a risk pool where everyone that ordinarily couldn't afford insurance or can't get it can get insurance. And then you got that big middle group there where we want to set up a plan where they can either have a health savings account if that's what they want, or if they want to buy health insurance through their employer, they can get it, or if they want to buy it themselves, they can buy it, and they can buy it across state lines, and it'll be portable. It'll be just like buying your automobile insurance. It's your insurance, and you'd get the same tax treatment that you would if you got it through your employer. We can do all of that for less than a fourth of what Obamacare is going to cost. Obamacare is projected, the latest projection from the Congressional Budget Office, and I emphasize the latest because they keep changing it, is over $1.8 trillion over the next 10 years. This plan would be less than $400 billion over 10 years. And it includes a tax credit that would be available to everyone to help them buy insurance, or it could go into their health savings account.
You said something interesting, Gary, and I don't hear a lot of guys in D.C. Talking about this, but the reality that to suggest a wholesale repeal of Obamacare would suggest that not only do you have a majority in the House, which Republicans currently have, you would have to have a supermajority in the Senate, and you would have to have a Republican president. That's what I hear you saying.
Well,
it's not realistic without having a comprehensive plan to replace it with.
You don't have to have a supermajority in the Senate if you've got a Republican president. But if you're talking about doing it after the 14 elections, between 15 and the next presidential election, you'd have to have enough votes in the Senate to override a veto. But I think most people, most sensible people, realize we're not going to repeal Obamacare and go back to what we had. We need to be talking about how do we fix the system, and we need to fix it in the right way, and we need to do it in a way that gives people the maximum amount of freedom, and rather than shoving it down their throats, which is what we've tried to do with Obamacare.
The governor has declined the expansion of Medicaid, saying that, while it's not going to cost the state money for the first couple of years, that obviously it's going to begin costing us money after the first 3 years. Are you in agreement with his declining the Medicaid expansion?
Absolutely. We at the Alabama Policy Institute, we recommended that he not do it. And one of the reasons is that long term, based on the new enrollees, that it was going to cost the state of Alabama another $600 million to close to $1 billion over about a 10-year period, and we can't pay for what we have. We need to fundamentally reform Medicaid, not necessarily expand it. And I started working on this back in 2005, had a meeting with a couple of governors about going to Congress and asking for a waiver and get the money block granted to the states, and maybe 5 or 6 states go together and do just what we were talking about earlier on for health care for younger people. Set up a plan where we put out for bid to a major health insurance company for major medical coverage, and then enroll Medicaid recipients into a health savings account, a debit card, so that you've got $4,000 or $5,000 on that debit card, and you try to instruct them on how to use it so that they don't go to the emergency room if they've got a routine illness. They go to an outpatient facility, a doc in the box, one of those. If they get a prescription, get a generic, but have a major emphasis on living a healthier lifestyle, because what we've got right now creates a huge disincentive to abuse the system. They go to the emergency room, and there's zero incentive to live a healthier lifestyle. We could set it up so that when they go into the doctor's office and pay for their care, they pay with a debit card. That's like a cash transaction. One doctor that I talked to about this, who's pretty smart on the business side of medicine, said he thought it might save up to 20% on the administrative costs. Well, that's like giving the doctors an increase in the reimbursement rate. But also tell those people that if you use this correctly and you save, you don't use it all, it'll roll over, and every 4 or 5 years you'll have an opportunity to withdraw part of that. So give them an incentive to live a healthier lifestyle and to use the healthcare system more wisely. But what we've got right now doesn't work.
Gary Palmer, our guest, he's running for the 6th congressional district seat, being vacated by Spencer Backus. I ask everyone this question, and I'm not trying to lead you in any particular direction, but how would you rate Spencer's job performance?
Well, I'm not running against Spencer, and I understand, Matt, but I'm running my own race, and I've known Spencer for over 20 years. And Spencer, I think, at his core, is a good man. He made some decisions that I don't agree with, but there are decisions my wife's made that I don't agree with. We're planning a wedding right now, and I'm asking not to know. But anyway,
I think this could be good training for the cost overruns of Washington. The wedding that you're planning.
All I've asked her is that when it's over, we still own the house.
That's good.
But anyway, I think Spencer did some good things, and I think Spencer would tell you if he were here right now that he did some things that he wish he could have a do-over on. But a lot of times you don't get a mulligan.
In Washington, obviously, you're not only dealing with domestic issues, but you would have the opportunity to have some sort of say in international affairs. So I'm curious your thoughts on the recent foreign policy issues involving Russia, Vladimir Putin flexing some muscles. Surely you would have a say in Washington about this. What do you think about it?
Well, I actually gave a speech on this last September in Oklahoma City. I was on a panel with the Attorney General of Oklahoma, Scott Pruitt, and I was talking about energy. In the United States, we've got 349 trillion cubic feet of proven natural gas reserves. We've got in one formation in Colorado, western Colorado and Utah and Wyoming, the Green River Formation, it's estimated up to 3 trillion barrels of recoverable oil. That's 3 times the amount of oil the world's used in the last 100 years. You look at what we're paying for natural gas here, we're paying less than $5 a cubic foot. And it's created a manufacturing boom. But you go to Europe and they're paying 10 to 12. They're paying anywhere in Europe and Asia anywhere from 2.5 times as much as we pay to 4 times as much. Russia is the world's largest exporter of natural gas, and this is what I pointed out in that speech out there. And they're one of the largest, if not the second largest, in terms of oil production. They hold Europe hostage on natural gas. You look at the map of Ukraine and where the pipelines are, and they're laced with natural gas pipelines. I made the point out there that if we were to start selling liquefied natural gas to Europe, first of all, it would help the European economy because it would bring down the cost of natural gas. But the Russians are rebuilding their military with their energy revenues. We should have been doing this years ago. If we had, I doubt that Putin would be in the Crimea right now. That's the whole point of him invading Georgia right after the 2008 election. And for the listeners who are not sure about it, he didn't invade Atlanta. He invaded the nation of Georgia, former Soviet satellite nation, because to secure the gas lines through Georgia. The Russians also are in dire need of additional warm water ports, and taking over Crimea gives them access to the Black Sea. That's another reason why they're in Syria, because they need that warm water port. So I think that there are ways to deal with this that make sense without getting into one of these standoffs in the middle of the street, see who draws first.
I mean, and the president at this point, there's a precious little he can do. To me, he's over a series of years painted himself into a corner, largely the verbiage that he's used in the past with regard to Syria, the red line type of stuff. Do you look at it as he's kind of painted American foreign policy into a corner?
He has no credibility in foreign policy. To tell you how little credibility the United States has right now, before the overthrow of the previous Ukrainian government, it was either Kerry, I think it was actually the Secretary of Defense, called the defense minister in Ukraine, and the guy didn't call him back. I can promise you, if one of Putin's guys had called, he would have called him back.
Gary Palmer, our guest, he's running for the 6th Congressional District. We'll take a short time out. Be back in a moment. 47 after. It's The Murphy Show, 1070 WAPI. Our Gary Palmer with us for a few more good minutes. I think it's fair to say that your area of expertise, of all the areas that you've dealt with in your life experience with Alabama Policy Institute, I mean, energy is your number one area of expertise. That's fair, isn't it, Gary?
I'd say I'm knowledgeable on that. I worked in engineering prior to starting the Alabama Policy Institute, and did everything from environmental systems to refuse to energy to aerospace. And I tell people that engineers are people who are good at math but don't have enough personality to be an accountant. So for whatever that's worth.
Well, I mean, the reason I bring it up because this issue with Keystone XL has gotten a lot of attention, and for someone with your level of expertise, I can imagine you just pull your hair out at the administration's inability or unwillingness to make a decision on this.
Well, the administration is committed to the eradication of fossil fuel, coal particularly, but also oil. And Keystone, if we were to open Keystone, that would create 20,000 direct jobs and another 100,000 indirect jobs. So the economic impact would be substantial. If we were, though, to build Keystone, we would be directing what is heavy crude into the United States, into our refineries, and it would also impact our energy prices, lower gasoline prices. But there's a geopolitical aspect of this as well. If we continue to hold this up, the Canadians are going to sell that oil. They're either going to sell it to us or they're going to sell it to China, and they will build that pipeline to their west coast. China is, I think all of their refineries are designed for heavy crude. They need this. We ought to be in the position where we're the ones selling the oil to China. Again, you look at what happened a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, with the Chinese leadership getting together with Putin. We have got to engage in the energy area, not just for the economy, but also because of the geopolitics.
If you are selected for the 6th Congressional District, one of 435, is there a congressperson in Washington that you look at and say that's a Gary Palmer guy or that's a Gary Palmer girl? I mean, that someone that you feel like closely reflects the manner in which you want to represent the 6th District?
Well, there's several people up there that I like. Tom Price from Georgia, Jim Jordan from Ohio, Tim Hulskamp from Kansas, Rogers from Washington, Morris, from Washington. There are a number of people up there. I think, it's easy to take shots at elected officials, but you don't know the full scope of what's involved. I had somebody say, well, isn't it just an extravagant lifestyle? And I said, what are you talking about? I know congressmen who fly home after the last vote. As soon as they can get on a plane, they spend the weekend at home. They're taking care of their families. They're doing their own yard work. They get a flight out Monday night or first thing Tuesday morning, go back, and in between they sleep in their office. So I try to cut.
It's only as extravagant as you make it, in other words.
Well, there's some of them who've taken advantage of it.
Sure.
And those are the ones that need to go home. We need to send people who don't need the job and who have the moral courage to cast a vote that will cost them the next election.
Do you believe in term limits?
Well, I'm term limiting myself.
Patricia, I got 10 seconds left, Patricia, and I got to get his website out. What's your website really quick, Gary?
Palmer4Alabama.com.
Listen, we'll do it again very soon. Thank you for this morning.